Hello! In this video we will handle pagination inside the chat. Right now we load all messages from the database and this is not really good. So in this video we will fix that, and also we will fix this problem when we refresh the page or switch between chats, we are not scrolled to the bottom. Let's go. So the question is how we are able to handle pagination in Firebase. Well, there are a few approaches, and the most common one is just to resubscribe to new chat messages every time we load a new portion. This is the approach that we take. We can take another approach to load only old messages on the initial load and then subscribe to new updates. However, this approach will not work because if we load old messages only once and we update one of the messages, it will not be updated in real time. So this is not our case. We want to update all messages and they all must be real time. That's why we're going to use the first approach. So let's navigate to index.js inside messages. And here at the top, we're first going to specify our size for the page. Let it be page size of 15. Now we need to create state inside our component that represents our current limit. So let's create limit and set limit. And by default, this state will be equal to page size. Okay, good. Now let's look inside useEffect where we fetch our messages. So we have this message ref that is not bounded to this useEffect or this component because it doesn't use any internal values. So we can safely move it here to the top. All right, good. Now we will have two functions here to load initial message and to load more messages when we click on the button at the top. So we're gonna create a new function just to share the logic. So here before useEffect, we create a new function load messages and we will wrap it in use callback in advance to optimize it. And let's put this logic over here inside load messages. And don't erase this subscription. It is really important to unsubscribe from useEffect as well. So now we have this chat ID over here as a dependency. Let's add it. And whenever we load new messages, we also make sure that we unsubscribe from old messages and subscribed to the new updates. So here, right before we get our new data, we're gonna call messageRef.off to unsubscribe from the previous updates. All right. Now inside this useEffect, we're gonna call load messages and we will specify it inside array of dependencies. And we're gonna remove chat ID because from now on, it's not the part of this useEffect. Okay, good. Now, what about limit and what about load more functionality? Let's create new function next to load messages that we will call on load more. Also, let's wrap it in use callback. And what should we put inside? Inside we will simply call load messages with our limit that we have inside the state. So now we need to specify load messages and limit as dependencies. And that's it. That's all for that function. Now inside load messages, we receive limit that we want to increase when we click on load more. So here we will have limit, and when we subscribe to new messages for our query builder, we can specify this property called limit to last. So the number of nodes to include in this query. And we're gonna specify limit, or because we already have limit variable declared, let's call it limit to last. And let's pass it over here. And in case if we have no value at all, let's just specify page size, just a small fallback over here. And every time we load a new portion of messages, we need to increase our current limit, right? So when we click on this button, our next limit is going to be our current limit plus page size. So here we're gonna put set limit and then we're gonna reference previous plus page size. Okay, now we need to define this button and we need to put this on load more handler for this button. So here at the very bottom where we render our markup, we're gonna put the next logic. So we're gonna ask if we have messages and messages.length is greater or equal to our page size, only then we will display another li element. Inside we will put button and inside button, we're gonna put load more. Now let's add a few class names. So for this li, we're gonna put text center, margin top 2, and margin bottom 2 as well. And also for on click, we're gonna specify on load more. And also we will put it with the green color, not red one. I don't like that one. Alright, good. Now let's take a look what we did. If we open our page right now, let me refresh it one more time, we can see now we have only 15 messages. And if I click on load more, you can see that more messages have been loaded. So this is it. This is what is happening. So right now, when we load our page initially, we have our initial subscription only for page size, which is currently 15. Then when we click on load more, this is being launched with our current limit that we increase, and it is going to be increased to 30, and we will unsubscribe from these updates and we're gonna subscribe to new updates. So this is what is happening in the background. All right. Now, what about our scroll? As you can see, it is pretty broken because when we load new messages, we're being scrolled to the top every time. This is no good. So we need to somehow control it. Well, for that, we need to use reference to get the actual element so we can manipulate its scroll position. For that, let's create new reference over here, and it is going to be, let's say, self-ref with use ref hook. Okay? Then we're going to pass that reference to our UL element. So reference is going to be self-reference. And now let's start to manipulate it. So first of all, for our initial use effect, when we load our page initially, we want to scroll to the very bottom, right? So here we're going to specify node, and we're going to reference self-ref.current to get the actual reference to our element. And here, right after we load our messages, we can put node scroll top equals node scroll height, and it will do its thing. However, the problem with this approach is that because this load messages is an asynchronous operation and this is synchronous, so this might be executed before this load messages has done with its thing. So it is important to put it as an async operation. For that, we will wrap it around set timeout, and we're gonna specify something like 200 milliseconds. So in this way, we ensure that this is being executed only when load messages is done and when all elements that we are trying to display are displayed on the page. All right. So now let's take a look. If I refresh the page, I can see that I did nothing, but I'm scrolled to the bottom. Yes, I can see this a little small delay of 200 milliseconds, but that's fine, right? There is nothing wrong with that. However, now I'm being scrolled to the bottom. Okay, our next approach is to actually keep the scroll position when we click on load more, so we are not scrolled to the top. Well, for that, inside load more, in the first place, let's again reference our current element. So node is going to be self-ref current. Then before we click on load more, we need to know the previous height of our scroll element, of our scroll position. So when we load new elements, we get the new height, and then we can subtract those values. So here we're gonna put alt height variable, and here we're gonna put node scroll height. All right. Then after we load our messages, we're gonna call set timeout again to make our operation asynchronous, again with timeout of 200 milliseconds. And then inside we're gonna specify new height, which is going to be node scroll height. And then we're gonna specify node scroll top equals new height minus alt height. All right. Now let's save it. Let's remove this space and let's take a look. Now we are scrolled to the bottom, and when I click on load more, you can see that the scroll position is retained. Okay, so it looks pretty good. However, there is one more case to handle. Whenever I write something in the chat, let's say hello, you can see that I'm not scrolled to the bottom. So we need to fix that. And ideally, we want to make it something like this. So if we are scrolled more than 50% inside our chat and we type something, we want to be scrolled to the bottom. However, let's say if we look for some old messages and if we type something or someone else types, we don't want to be scrolled to the bottom, right? For that, we need to also define our logic. For this reason, here at the top, we're gonna create a new function that we will name should scroll to bottom, and it will receive this self-ref current. So here we're gonna put node, and here we will put the next logic. And also we can specify second argument, which is going to be, let's say, threshold, which is going to be, let's say, 30% by default, okay? So here we're gonna calculate percentage of our scroll position, and then we're gonna return the comparison, we're gonna return the Boolean value if our percentage that we define over here is greater than threshold that we specified, okay? So percentage is going to have the next logic. So first of all, we're gonna multiply our value by 100%. Then we're gonna divide this value by node scroll height minus node client height, and this logic will give us the percentage. And as a fallback, we're gonna provide just 0, okay? So now we can use this function to detect if we really need to scroll to the bottom if we hit the threshold. Okay, so let me copy this and let's go to load messages. And here what we will do, we're gonna specify const, again, let's say node, and then we're gonna reference self-ref.current. And what we will do, we will put it right after we set messages. Then we're gonna ask if we should scroll to the bottom with our current node, and let's keep threshold as 30%. Only then we're gonna put node scroll top and then node scroll height, okay? And actually, you know what? We can put this node to the top to reuse it, okay, like this. Now let's take a look. So let me load more messages, let me scroll to the top, and right now when I type a new message, I am not scrolled to the bottom. However, if I scroll more than 30% and if I type hi, I can see that I'm being scrolled to the bottom. So this is it, guys. This is how we can handle pagination, and this is how we can control our scroll position. Okay. I guess it was not too confusing because for me, at the first glance, it was. All right, so let's commit our changes. Let's put git add everything, git commit, and let's say edit pagination and control scroll position. Perfect. See you in the next one.